Hey, welcome to episode 41 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I'm your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation. Episode 41 already, recorded on December 1st, 2023. The year is flying by. Today we're going to talk about the other innovation essentials. Everybody thinks code is it. There's a sort of an undue focus on code here in the greater Vegas area. In fact, the tech startup scene, the future of unicorns and exits and making this the next Silicon Valley and so on. Let me tell you, not everything is code. The world would be a horrible place if it were. There is a lot of dependence on code. AI has certainly made that, brought that to the fore, so to speak, lately, but you may not realize this if you don't think about it, but if you do think about it, you use a lot of things that are not code every day. Those are just as important. We can start with food and drink. If you would like to innovate in those areas, well, you should still come to Vegas if you're not here already. There's plenty of room to be innovative, creative, around something as simple as eating and drinking. So, no code required. However, your inventory system at your restaurant is probably coded, and you probably have no idea how it works because it's proprietary secret software. That's not as fun. But tech adjacent, sure. Is everything tech? Is everything code? Not necessarily. So we used to be Code for Vegas, 2014-ish. Back in the day, the original Code for Vegas organization was part of Code for America. We rebooted it in 2022. We formed an independent Nevada nonprofit on June 16th, 2022. Became a public charity. Determination in October, retroactive to June 16th. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit. Then we formally filed our name change paperwork. Why? Because after all that, as Code for Vegas, the reboot, people were put off by the word code, which is, retrospectively, it's fine. It becomes clear that words do matter. And Code for Vegas was telling people if you are not a coder, as people said to me explicitly, perhaps they're not welcome, which they were. So coding became a little bit of an isolationist term, maybe insulating term, Code for Vegas. So we said, hey, we have an innovation district. We have an innovation center. Innovate.Vegas is the city website for those things. Innovation is fairly generic. Anybody could do it. It takes many forms. So let's jump on that bandwagon. Innovate for Vegas was a one-word change, easy to do, yet very meaningful. So coding is still a thing, of course. I myself, I'm a software engineer, so I have those biases. I have no, as many will attest, I have no sort of visual sense of aesthetic. So website design and whatnot. My designs tend to be functional or very blocky or maybe dense. The new trends are not things I follow. I'm not a web designer. So plenty of room for that. But there is an undue focus on coding when there is so much more to do. Not only with AI, but remember Web3 and cryptocurrencies? Barely, perhaps. These are very tech topics. There was an attempt, and I guess there still is, to bring them to the masses so that anyone could participate in Web3, the future of the internets, and even more precariously, the cryptocurrency boom. Sink all of your life savings into some sort of a math thing that nobody really understood, right? It's not hard to understand, but it's not something that people were fully comprehending. We can talk about fiat currencies and whatnot another time, but it is important to understand that understanding technology is important. Understanding some aspects of it is important, but not everyone is a coder. There are many, many attempts out there to introduce and make popular what's called low code and no code, where you don't actually have to program anything or don't have to program so much. So you're really just integrating pre-written code written by someone else. And then there's AI-generated mystery applications. You can take your chances on what your selected third-party large language model happens to create based, once again, on what other people have written already. So it's kind of hit or miss, but the important part is that you remove yourself from not only needing to understand how these things work, but understanding how these things work. It becomes a mystery box, just like that inventory management system I referred to earlier. It does what you think, I hope, or you hope, but you don't necessarily understand how it works. So understanding some aspects of technology is important, but to presume that everyone will be writing code, I think is already out the window. I think nobody expects that anymore with the advent of AI being able to write a lot of this stuff. So for better or worse, you're off the hook if you don't want to be on it. Some of us are on it and will be on it. But the important part is that you, if you are not a coder, could collaborate with a coder, and that's sort of our model moving forward. So if you're not necessarily a coder, but you could work with coders, you could collaborate with coders on projects, you're actually sitting next to or communicating with directly the person or people writing code that you are designing or that you have specified, right? You might say, I need an app that does this. And then you work with the people on the code side and you work through how it functions. And you say, no, I don't like this part. This could do this in a different way. So you actually do what's called co-creation. So you could say, hey, I'm not a coder, but I have this design, and you could be, or you have some other part of the essential talent selection that I'll get to in a moment. So coders and non-coders can collaborate on projects and work together, co-collaborate during the process. And so the end goal will ultimately be better. It will be closer to what the customer, the client, the user, the co-creator, what they need, what they want, what it must do, what it must not do, and so on. And you actually have people to interact with rather than handing off the design, implementation, and outcome to a faceless low-code or no-code tool or platform, or to an AI thing that will generate code and wish you the best of luck. And it will probably say that. This is why non-technical co-founders are a thing. There's two sides to every coin, at least two. And that's what we propose. So creating is that other side. It's a very broad term. Coding could mean a lot of things. Usually that's the tech side. Maybe it's even the math. Maybe it's the physics for a physical or hardware system, or analysis of moving systems. You may need physics. You may need math. You may need hardware. You may need to be able to solder something. So broadly speaking, the coding side is all the STEM. The STEAM, the A part, art, is the creating part. These are drastically oversimplified, of course, but not to diminish any of these areas, these focus areas, these talent areas. Our effort in the Forkening was and is to connect the coders and the creators, the people who are creative, the people with aesthetic talent, like not me, and people who take an active interest and have an interest or talent in a great many things that are essential, and again, which are not often thought of explicitly because they're just there. We all take advantage of these talents and abilities daily, and we don't even really know it. And so when someone with these interests, talents, abilities sees the word coding and says, well, I'm not a coder, they are possibly even more essential because code breaks, but and you kind of know it, but a user interface doesn't break. It may work just fine, except for the people trying to use it don't use it because it's confusing or it's poorly designed. And that's something that the creator side, the creative person, might actually interact with the users, might actually ask them for some co-creation input, and might actually have better ideas than a coder does about how humans use mobile devices, desktop computers, physical devices, and so on. So absolutely essential parts of the process, these talents, abilities, and interests. That's the really important part. So innovation is everywhere. You see it, you experience it, you interact with it all the time. We just don't think about it so much. And when coding is overemphasized, when it becomes the star of the show, we tend to forget sometimes the other critical parts. As a person, as a human, you will very rarely interact directly with the code. You will never really highlight an if statement. You'll never run a code notebook on Jupyter or similar. But you will select a menu item. You will click on user interface elements. You will type in text or make selections on surveys or other forms to submit. You'll read content. The typeface selection might impact how you read it, the layout of an article, whether it's very compact or more open. These are things that do impact you all the time. You interact with these aspects of tech all the time. So from our perspective, the creating side includes, and we're not talking about food and drink. I mentioned those. We don't really do food and drink. We could, I guess, but just from if you think about, they're just writing apps or they're just doing coding. Well, what about graphical imagery like icons and logos and other visual assets, the flourish, the parts of the interaction that are visual? I'll get to that. Hang on. Video production, audio production like this. User interface design, which I've touched on. Marketing campaigns. How do you let people know what you're even working on and what it's supposed to accomplish? And even for volunteers, you deserve recognition. You deserve attribution, of course, for your time and your energies and your interests. So letting people know what this is, it's not really sales, but just generally, communicating with the world what we're doing. And that also extends somewhat to the equivalent of social media, whether it's press or news. Letting people know what we're working on generally and specifically, absolutely essential. Quality assurance, testing, that is often underrated, and yet it is almost the most important thing here. If you give someone a product or you perform a service and you have no idea if it worked or if it was good or if they enjoyed it or liked it or maybe they suffered some pains or damage, if you find out after, if you've released your product or you've launched your service and you find out these things after you've done your entire customer base, your entire user base, the entire world a disservice. If you test as though you're a user, if you have a user advocate in your workflow, your quality assurance person or team, you will do better, I promise. So quality assurance is essential. So in this case, it would be an innovator who actually cares about the product and who is creatively ensuring that what the group of volunteers that are putting in their volunteer time are working on actually works. It's arguably a critical step that is often left to chance. And this is also in the big world, the big leagues in the big world. So documentation, developer documentation tends to be a little bit more specific, but documentation for the world, anything from the quick README to the text bubbles or the instructions or the how-to for a normal person, a non-coder, a normal person, a person who intends to use the thing. If we take our open transit project, actually I'll step through all these as an example, but telling people how the open transit platform works so that they can get to work or school or home or wherever they're going, rather than trying to figure out what the time is, the timestamp, the arrival time or the schedule time, which is how the travesty of a platform, the transit app, works today, that's not us. Language translation, actually here in Vegas, not trivial. Not 2 languages spoken here, but many. 40 million people visit from everywhere. And here again, if you're just trying to get around the city in the Open Transit Project, why not support their language, not just English and Spanish? Accessibility, once again, text size, the font face, the size, the weight, whether it's bold, hiding visual cues that cannot be seen by someone with visual impairments doesn't help anything. So whatever you develop, and this goes for hardware and software or anything really, needs to be usable. You need to account for people who don't have 100% functionality. And in fact, that's a lot of people. If you presume 100%, if you have a person with vision that is not great, they're not truly vision impaired, but they don't have 2020 perfect vision, and you choose small font for software user interface or a hardware device, or hey, even on your menu in a restaurant, anywhere. If your type is difficult to read for vision that is not perfect, you make your entire effort less appealing and less useful. So language translation and accessibility, they are too often afterthoughts, but they actually enable the people trying to use what you have created to be able to use what you have created. And co-creation engagement in general, this means working with the people that will use what you're making. The example I always give, if you have ever prepared a meal or a snack or any food or drink for someone, perhaps someone, a friend or a family member or whoever, comes over, sits down at a table or wherever, and you've prepared this thing, you give it to them. They take a sample, a taste. What's the first question you ask? How is it? That's co-creation. You've gotten feedback from your user, your customer, your client, and you can iterate on that. Now, if they were in the kitchen, and if you've ever made cookies when you're a kid, or maybe even now, if you taste the cookie batter, if you are preparing a sauce or of anything, if you're preparing anything. So the food example of co-creation is essentially perfect. You have yourself or others can taste along the way. You can add seasoning. You can try to undo adding too much seasoning, but you ask along the way. So co-creation, it can also happen again at the end, at the tail end, when you've prepared and now served, but you can always go back and fix in that scenario. So it still sort of counts. So in our open transit example, I'll just run through these again. Graphical imagery, just the icons, the color scheme, accounting for the accessibility, as I mentioned. Video production, if there's a how-to or a help video that could transcend language, like how do you board the bus? How do you board the bus in a scooter or a wheelchair? Where are how do you run the bus pass through the little terminal or kiosk? I don't know, what do you call that thing? The bus pass reader. Audio production, anything from podcasts like this, but also the audio component for people with vision impairments, how to do things, how to get around Vegas or your city, wherever you are. So audio is a great interface for not only vision impaired people, but people who cannot watch or consume a video while they're trying to accomplish whatever it is you're doing. And let's not forget as well, audio prompts are a part of it, right? So an interface that includes beeps and tones and maybe even haptic feedback to go along with that. That's the vibration of your phone. These are all essential as well. So the audio and maybe physical feedback part of that. User interface design in general, just knowing how people think, how they want to work through a workflow. As I tell people for Open Transit, if we were to redesign the user interface completely and launch it on Monday, a person that says, hey, I will try this, by Tuesday, they will go back to the old version because I need to get to work. I don't need to experiment with your user interface. It's a fact of life. If you're going to deliver something that people really need, it needs to work. So the user interface design needs to account for that people are not interested in hunting for the path. They are interested in getting to work or school or whatever. Open transit marketing obviously would be about engaging not only with riders, but also the drivers so that people know that there is a better way to communicate with the riders and drivers about schedules, about people waiting at stops, about people who need special access assistance perhaps, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, someone who actually rides the bus and will use the platform while it's in development, quality assurance, and so on. So these are all things that are not coding and yet are critical. And we as an organization will absolutely benefit from working with people who are not just coders. Not only that, but coders and creators collaborating will benefit. These are job skills, they're life skills. That's what we're actually about, believe it or not. We're not a software company. We're not a technology company. Our entire purpose, you may have heard me say this before, to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. There's nothing in there about writing code or websites or physical hardware or anything, really. Very generic by design. Innovation takes many forms. So one thing that does come up, though, we use GitHub for project management. So Some might say, well, I don't use GitHub. The unfortunate thing is that GitHub is not just a coding tool. It's actually a project management tool as well, sort of. Anybody who wants to argue or so, or you come on, let's have a conversation about that. But if you can fill out a form when you're posting a comment on a social media website, you can use GitHub. Okay. If you find a problem and you want to tell someone about it, you can open an issue. You don't have to be a coder. You just have to say, hey, here's the issue. When I click on this thing happens. It should be that thing. That's what I'm expecting. That's it. So there's nothing magical about GitHub. GitHub is a tool. It has multiple functions that help with project development. It tends to lean towards code projects. But if you use Figma, I have used Figma. I don't really find much value in it for my day-to-day because I'm not an aesthetic visual designer. I don't design things visually as Figma enables. But I have used it because other people have used Figma to create things, and I interact with them. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Figma now integrates with GitHub. Photoshop probably does not. So you may have your favorite tools that you use as a creator. You may think GitHub is not for me because I'm not a coder, but just like our entire organization, there is benefit in using the tools of others that you don't normally use. You learn that way, and you also are able to collaborate with others. These are job and life skills. That's what we're about. So there is true measurable value in learning how to cross over, if you will, because the world moves too quickly to fear applications, platforms, and methodologies. You should learn them. You should not run away from them. GitHub will not inflict harm if you learn how to use it. You will probably not use it every day, but you will be able to use it, and you will be able to collaborate with others who do to accomplish projects and outcomes. I am not a fill in the blank. It is not an excuse. It is a reason to try something new. That is ultimately what aids collaboration. And that again is a job and life skill that we are all about. So learn to work with others and use the tools of the other people that you're working with. Learn how they work. You will be a better contributor to projects and the workforce. And hey, you may start your own company, and knowing if you imagine if you start your own company, you have coders working for you. They're using GitHub or GitLab or any of the various variations on this theme. And you have no idea how these tools work. You have lost control of your company. So, and I've seen it happen, and it's unfortunate. So let's start learning how these tools work. They're not hard. Don't fear them. Embrace them. Make them yours. All of this matters because innovation is important, critical. Thinking outside the box, being able to solve problems that you understand rather than waiting for someone else who does not understand to take a stab at it. Innovation is much more than tech and coding. It's very broad. It's got a lot of moving parts that you can master, that you can become expert in, or you can become familiar enough in to collaborate and discuss and understand. As I mentioned, some of the greater Vegas area, some people in it are overly focused on tech. Not everything is tech. Tech adjacent, as I've said, or maybe no tech at all. Innovation takes many forms. Someone invented a slingshot. No tech necessary. Later, you could do some physics. You could figure out the torque around your wrist, right? Yeah, sure. There's some tech in there. But the innovation came in the form of solving a problem at the time with the materials and knowledge available to accomplish the goal that needed to be accomplished. It wasn't writing code or worrying about GitHub, right? So innovation takes many forms. Encouraging innovation across disciplines, especially applied to what we're doing, civic volunteer projects, elevates communities, which is one of our goals, and provides a way to develop job and life skills, which I've talked about a couple times here. Everybody wins. And doing all this collaboratively adds more job and life skills, as I've said many times, but it bears repeating. Expands the reach of the organization. One person can do many things. Two people with different skill sets who can work together can do many more, and so on. The whole is greater than the sum of the volunteer parts, if we can work together. If we do not shun the tools, methods, and techniques of the others, people with other interests and talents, But if we embrace them, if we learn how they work, learn how to work with them, I do not need to be an aesthetic graphic designer to understand how people are using their tools and methods and techniques to pursue their interests in aesthetic graphic design. They may be web designers. They may understand completely the color schemes, the accessibility requirements, the layout options. They may be all over the box model for CSS. They may have no idea how JavaScript works. They may have no idea how a database works on the server side. But there is someone who does. If they can work together, if they can collaborate, everybody wins. Along the way, someone on the code side might be learning how to do web design better. On the web design creator side, they could learn how the JavaScript stuff works. They could learn from each other. Both win. And the outcome will be better for it, which means everybody wins. That's what we're doing. So the forking hasn't really gotten anywhere because we don't have a lot of volunteers, either coding or creating. Hopefully that will change for 2024, but I did want to leave this here just so for posterity, people will understand that there is more to life than coding and tech. Don't believe the hype. The real world has real people in it, and real people need these other things I've mentioned and more. Be creative and put it to good use. Take your talents and abilities and interests and make your communities better. And work with others. Learn new things. This sounds like a recruiting promotion, but it's not. It's sharing our perspective that not everything is code. Code for Vegas was. Innovate for Vegas is about civic volunteerism and elevating our communities and developing job skills and life skills in these areas that I've mentioned. We're not a software company. We're not trying to launch a unicorn and exit and get rich and wealthy. You can do that based on what you learn by collaborating with others. Imagine that. There is a reason to do this. Thanks for listening as always. If you would like to be a guest and talk about innovation, we're always down to chat. If you'd like to share this with others, that would be wonderful. If you'd like to subscribe on your favorite podcast reader, podcatcher as they're sometimes called. I say reader. The Google Reader used to also capture podcast feeds. So the good old days. But if you subscribe, tell your friends, getting the word out about our local volunteer coding and creating force of innovation in the greater Vegas area and beyond. We are always down to collaborate with others across the universe. It's a big place. Lots of room for stuff to do. A lot of things to learn. Projects to launch. Thanks for listening. And as the end of the year approaches, do have safe holidays. Be good out there. And don't forget, we'll have another episode coming out next week. Thanks for listening.